Bay area.
In November, Orion's mass is measured. What's next on the red planet? An Apollo-era pic gets processed. The crew remembers Apollo 8. Dawn's flyby is coming. And a 4,200-mile journey concludes.
Members of the media witnessed the final mass properties tests on the boilerplate Orion crew module in preparation for the Launch Abort System flight test scheduled for next spring at the White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico. The tests conducted at the Dryden Flight Research Center included a series of weight and balance measurements to determine the module's weight distribution and resistance to rotation. The results confirmed that the crew module's mass properties measurements meet the necessary requirements for the upcoming Launch Abort System test. With these measurements, NASA engineers hope to be able to accurately predict how the module will behave when it's launched. The boilerplate crew module was built at the Langley Research Center.
The finalists for the landing site of NASA's next mission to Mars have been selected. 4 locations for the Mars Science Laboratory that'll set down on the red planet have been chosen by project leaders following input from international Mars experts and engineers. The sites are Eberswalde, where an ancient river deposited a delta in a possible lake. Holden, a crater containing alluvial fans, flood deposits, possible lake beds, and clay-rich deposits. Marth, with exposed layers containing at least 2 types of clay. And Gale, with a mountain of stacked layers including clays and sulfates.
This is the first time where we have wonderful spectroscopy at high enough resolution that we can match it with the terrain. So we can point to layers and say this is where we'd want the rover to go and make its measurements.
The rover's landing site will be chosen next summer. A photograph of the Earth rising above the moon taken from space 42 years ago is now more detailed than ever. The iconic image snapped by the Lunar Orbiter 1 spacecraft in 1966 was saved on one of 1,500 magnetic tapes recently rediscovered by NASA. The Lunar Orbiter Image Recovery Project at the Ames Research Center took analog data from the tapes, converted them to digital form, then reconstructed the image. Similarly enhanced lunar images will be made available to the public after they're processed and calibrated. Scientists hope the highly detailed imagery will help plan NASA's return to the moon. 3 pioneering men, 6 phenomenal days. 4 days before Christmas, on December 21, 1968, Frank Borman, James Lovell, and William Anders made their mark in the history books, becoming the first men to circle the moon. 2 Washington institutions hosted events to commemorate the 40th anniversary of the mission. The museum hosted a unique discussion with the Apollo 8 astronauts about their epic journey.
The most memorable thing for me was to see the Earth about as big as your fist at arm's length and realize that the Earth is so tiny, almost trivial on the physical scale of things. I don't think that's sunk in general to humanity.
Yeah, my most memorable moment was when I looked out the window and saw water splashing on the thing, knowing that we had safely landed in the Pacific.
The event also featured the premiere of the museum's new NASA short documentary.
It's my pleasure to welcome the Apollo 8 astronauts.
The National Air and Space Museum also hosted an event to honor Borman, Lovell, and Anders and remember the accomplishments of Apollo 8.
Because the mission of Apollo 8 was really to check the navigation and to check for suitable landing spots, the flat areas, the mare, the sea, that would give the people who would attempt the first landing the greatest chance of survival.
I think that the 3 of us were very, very fortunate Americans. 400,000 people put that thing together, 400,000 Americans. I felt very, very, very blessed to be with Jim and Bill, because there was a wonderful camaraderie there.
The successful 6-day Apollo 8 mission proved a firm stepping stone to the Apollo 11 moon landing 7 months later. NASA's Dawn spacecraft is gliding towards a February flyby of Mars. Dawn recently shut down its ion propulsion system after gaining the thrust needed to use the red planet's gravity to guide the spacecraft toward its ultimate destination, the asteroid belt. That's where Dawn's expected to begin its exploration of the asteroid Vesta in 2011 and the Dwarf Planet Ceres in 2015.
We've only used about 168 pounds of propellant, and yet that's enough to accelerate the spacecraft by more than 4,000 miles per hour. We just finished thrusting November 20th, and that put us on course, so the spacecraft is headed for exactly where it needs to go in order to fly by Mars to get the gravity assist that will then help send it on to Vesta.
Astronomers and scientists hope Dawn's orbits of Vesta and Ceres will help them better understand the origins of the universe. For more about Dawn's 8-year, 3 billion-mile mission, visit www.nasa.gov/Dawn.
4,142 so far.
Former NASA astronaut John Harrington has completed his cross-country bicycle tour to promote student interest in science, technology, engineering, and math. Harrington arrived at the Kennedy Space Center 3 months and more than 4,100 miles after departing from Cape Flattery, Washington. Harrington met with school students in every state through which he bicycled.
I think it's important kids realize that things they do in life can be challenging, and the things that are most satisfying in life that you do are the most challenging things. I think riding a bike, flying in space, you graduate from high school, college, they all have to tie that all together. And if they do, then they'll be successful, and that's the point behind the whole thing.
Harrington became the first Native American to fly in space aboard Shuttle Endeavour in 2002. As a mission specialist on STS-113, Harrington logged more than 330 hours in space, almost 20 hours of which were spent on 3 spacewalks. 2008 concludes with an end to MRO's first phase, and Endeavour piggybacks home. NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter has just completed its primary science phase. After a 7-month journey to Mars and 6 months of aerobraking to reach its science orbit, MRO has spent 2 years seeking out the history of water on the red planet. It has captured extreme close-ups of the Martian surface, analyzed minerals, monitored daily global weather, and measured how much water and dust is in Mars's atmosphere. MRO's latest finding: Mars has rhythm. Climate cycles persisting for millions of years on ancient Mars left a record of rhythmic patterns in thick stacks of sedimentary rock layers, revealed in 3-dimensional detail by MRO's HiRISE camera.
One of the really exciting things is that these rocks we know now are essentially recording an archive of the past climate. So someday we could go there and actually read the ancient history of Mars in the rocks. And so we know now that there is an archive existing on the planet that we could go look at to learn about the ancient climate.
Space Shuttle Endeavour was ferried back to its home base, the Kennedy Space Center, on the back of a modified 747. The plane is one of 2 shuttle carrier aircraft maintained by NASA. Endeavour departed the Dryden Flight Research Center at Edwards Air Force Base 10 days after landing there, following the successful completion of STS-126.
And that's this year at NASA. For more on these and other stories, log on to www.nasa.gov.